Alright, before we start, I need to address that all of my videos are for 13-year-old and older. Yeah, okay. Welcome back, humans, to another What If. Today, I will be doing part 4 to What If Deku had the powers of the Sage of the Six Paths. Before I start the What If, I did get a suggestion to Deku's Mangekyo powers being Kamui and Tsukuyomi. Despite already choosing the abilities, I'll try to work this in somehow. I got the idea from the person. Their username goes OO-O-O. I can't pronounce that. I have no clue. It's too early in the morning. Literally 1 o'clock. I can't think. Thanks for the idea. I'll implement it somehow and I'll merge the powers I have made for it and the powers suggested. Well, with that being said, let's begin. Last time, Deku took the entrance exam and destroyed the 0-pointer while protecting people in need. He had strange interactions with both a girl that was not meant to be seen, aka an invisible quirk, and another girl who had a gravity quirk named Ochako Uraraka. After healing Uraraka's hurt ankle, he leaves without another word. Oh yeah, that reminds me. You know how in the last video it suddenly stopped? For some reason, my brain was like, yeah, it's fine. And I just resumed the footage, like near the ending of the video. So that's where most of this information is coming from. After healing Uraraka's hurt ankle, he leaves without another word. With this, we enter back into the What If. Deku walks away from Yue and does so without interacting with everyone. About a week later, he is meditating on the ceiling in his room while moving his truth-seeking orbs around him in a circle. His mom then barges into the room with a letter in her hand, breaking Deku's concentration, making him fall off the ceiling onto the floor. His mom is worried, but then he suddenly stands up and asks his mom why she's in his room. She responds with, There's a letter from Yue. Ingo then hands the note to Deku and stands behind him. While he opens the letter, it opens to reveal a disc which falls onto the table, showing a projection of All Might. The projection then speaks. I am here presenting you your exam results. Young Midori, I would like to inform you that you got 238 points, beating my own record. Nice work. Not only that, but you beat my score in rescue points. You had achieved 174 hero points through helping and saving those in need. Bring your total score to 457, breaking school records. Congratulations, young Midoriya, and welcome to your hero academia. Deku sits there smiling at the frozen recording and looks at his mom. Huh, I set a school record. Interesting. Some time passes and it's officially the first day of UA. He goes and looks for his class, and when he finds it, he thinks to himself, what a large door, and opens it. But when he does, the class goes silent and stares at him. Well, all but two. A blue-haired glasses-wearing teen and Bakugo. When the blue-haired teen sees Deku, he runs over while chopping the air. And he says, I apologize for my actions in the entrance exam. You are a better student. You found out the secret way to obtain more points. Deku looks at him with a blank face. I didn't figure it out. It just seemed obvious that people should help others. Don't you think so, Glasses? As Deku finishes this, Ida can't say anything because he knows he's right and sits down. Deku, taking no time, does the same and as everyone is silent, Deku exclaimed, "You can come out now." Aizawa pops out from the underside of his desk. Shocked, Deku knew he was there. Deku places his hands on the desk and places a flying raging seal. Aizawa comes out of the mini shock he felt when Deku noticed him and addressed the class. "Alright, today we'll be doing a quirk assessment. Put on your gym clothes and get outside." Deku stands up and walks out of the class down to the gym. When people start speaking up, Uraraka asks, Why do we need to do that? We had our quirks tested in the entrance exams." "I don't care what you think is and isn't needed. I'm your homeroom teacher, and due to UA's lack of restrictions, I can run my class how I see fit. Now get outside." The class slowly piled out of the room and outside. Once outside, all the students of 1A were lined up in rows. Aizawa then says, "Now that you're all together, I'll now tell you that the person who comes last in this test will be expelled." Most of the class freak out, except for 4 people: a kid with half-split red and white hair with a scar on his right, with a scar on his red side; a female who has a large black ponytail; Bakugo; and Deku. As the class asks in near unison why this is, Aizawa moves over to Deku and asks how far his farthest through middle school was, ignoring the rest of the class complaining. For the time being, Deku then looks back up at him and saying 497 meters, though I think I was holding back a bit. The entirety of the class, who looks astonished, aside from Bakugo, who stands there with a normal blank face. Aizawa asks if this was with his quirk or not, but then Bakugo chimes in, "Oi, we weren't able to use quirks in middle school." Everyone's jaw drops even farther this time. Aizawa tries to compose himself and asks Deku, "Alright then, well, throw it with your quirk now since you got the top score." Deku then steps into the circle and makes a few shadow clones and throws the ball. And it's about to use his quirk, but the ball he just threw, but it ended up being cancelled and his shadow clones disperse. Deku then looks around, locking eyes with Aizawa. What was that for? Aizawa looks away from Deku and looks at the device in his hand. His eyes widen, and he stares at the device, immediately shaking it off. And looking again, he says, "I was just confirming that you were able to throw that far without your quirk, and I guess you weren't lying." The class looks shocked as Aizawa shows the class the device. It's 536 meters. Aizawa then tells Deku to throw it with his quirk, and Deku looks at him. For real this time? Aizawa then nods his head, and Deku makes 20 shadow clones, a whole 15 more than before, and places a flying raging seal on the ball and asks, all goes as long as I don't leave the circle, correct?" Aizawa nods once again, and Deku begins to throw the ball. Once it leaves his hand, he and all his shadow clones weave hand seals and in unison all chant at once. Earth release rising pillars, to which 21 pillars of rock rise up from the ground, each striking the ball at full force, pushing it farther and farther until all pillars are done. At that point, all 20 of Deku's clones disappear, but the ball did not hit the land yet. Deku put a flying raging seal on the ball, making one of his clones grab it, and each of the rest of the clones grabbing that clone's leg, and creating a long chain of Deku's clones, which spin around and launch the ball in the air again. All 20 of them weave hand seals and yell. Wind release, great wind thrust, to which 20 blasts of wind come out of each of the clones' mouths before the ball stops and begins to go down. Before this can happen fully, sorry. I lost my place, hold on. But before this can happen, all of his clones turn to the ball and yell one more jutsu. Wind release, fatal push, and the ball flies out of sight. When it lands, Aizawa shows the number of the class and says it's 296, or 2,961 meters, or for us it's 9,714 feet. The class is astonished, but Deku looks disappointed before asking Aizawa if he can do that throw again. Aizawa reluctantly agrees. This confuses the class because... No, hold on, sorry. Aizawa reluctantly agrees, but instead of making 20 clones, he only makes one. This confused the class, seeing as though he made less clones, but instead of a really flashy technique, he makes the clone move 10 feet away and tosses the ball to it. And when the clone catches it, the clone immediately flies up into the air, making the number show up as infinity. The class becomes more surprised and stare at Deku as he walks by, not making eye contact with anyone and going back to his place in line. After everyone threw the ball, it was a 50-meter dash. Everyone got the same except for Bakugo and Deku. Except for Deku and Bakugo. Bakugo decreases his time by 3.26 seconds. Or decreases his time to 3.26 seconds. And Deku makes his time to 0.19 seconds using the body flicker technique. Everyone is baffled once again, but Ida takes this the hardest because the person he assumed to be a disrespectful troublemaker is in fact faster than him and seemingly able to do more than normal people with quirks can. Next would be the standing long jump. Everyone does similar, but Deku just flies over to the end and drops down. After that, they did the side steps, where Deku puts 2 flying Raijin seals on the ground and teleports to each of the sides until the timer is over. After that, they do the sit-ups, and Deku once again blows everyone's mind with the raw amount that he can do. Next is the seated toe touch, and afterwards the distance run. Once again, Deku aces all of these. When all of the tests are finished, Aizawa moves in front of the class and presents the scores in front of the class. That was redundant. And the places of everyone is moved down by 1 because Deku is placed at the top. Normally this would mean that Mineta would be at the bottom, but instead of Mineta, I'll make the person who is at the bottom Hagakure, the invisible girl. Aizawa looks at Hagakure and says, "Toru Hagakure, pack your stuff, you're expelled." Toru looks on the verge of crying and turns to go back to the class when her hand is grabbed. She looks who grabbed it, and it's Deku. He lets go and she stands still with a slight blush. Was still on the verge of crying. Deku then looks at Aizawa and starts to speak up. "Aizawa-sensei, don't you think it's unfair that someone with an Sorry, something just happened with my script. Don't you think it's unfair that someone with an extremely powerful and useful quirk is being expelled just because their quirk is not suited for physical fitness exams? A hero doesn't always start off good at everything. They train to fit specific needs and specific weaknesses that they and their quirks have." Aizawa looks at Deku with dead eyes and tells him, "If I let her stay in the hero course and in this class, you have to agree to manage her and such." Deku then looks into Aizawa's eyes with a serious stare and nods. Aizawa then turns to Hagakure and yells, "Alright then, I suppose you're back in. Stay under that kid's wing and don't mess up, because if you do, I won't be so lenient next time." "Alright, sorry, I needed to fix my stuff. Alright, stay under that kid's wing and don't mess up, because if you do, I won't be so lenient next time." Hagakure then looks in Deku's direction, only turning her head, and she smiles, thinking he won't notice, but to her surprise, he turns to her and smiles back. After the initial shock, she turns back to the now speaking Aizawa. "Alright, well..." With that over, you can pick up a syllabus in the classroom, have it turned in by Monday next week. The class slowly leaves, and so is Deku, and Hagakure stops him. He turns to see Hagakure looking down at her two hands, grasping onto Deku's, and she asks, "Why? Why did you help me?" Deku then looks at Hagakure and pats her on the head. "Because you have potential, and I see you becoming a great hero one day. I couldn't stand by watching someone like that be thrown out of the hero course." Hagakure then looks at Deku with tears in her eyes and asks, "Do you really think that?" "Yes, Hagakure, I do." She then looks at Deku, wipes away her tears, and throws her arms around him. Thank you so much, Midoriya." Hagakure then remembers what she is doing, and she pulls away, holding a prominent blush on her face. Deku looks at this and cracks a little smile and remarks, "You look cute when you blush." Upon hearing these words, she once again blushes, but upon rerunning them in her head, she remembers something. "Midoriya, can you see me?" Deku then looks at her confused. "Yes, I can." Hagakure then looks surprised and asks how, because her quirk is to be invisible permanently. Deku, shocked by this, and deactivates his Sharingan to test a theory that he had. He then looks into the direction of where Hagakure was and sees nothing, just a wall that was once behind her. He activates the Sharingan and sees Hagakure staring at him, mesmerized, close to his face, knowing that he had deactivated the skill. But when he locks eyes with her, she stumbles back, and Deku catches her with a shadow clone, allowing her to get her balance. And he poofs his shadow clone. When she thanks Deku again, he states that it is no issue and pats her on the head. He then... Sorry for so many cuts. I keep playing with my headphones and they accidentally connect even though I don't want them to. So if that's why you hear any cuts or me accidentally repeating anything, that's probably why. Okay, where was I? He then pats her on the head. He then gives Hagakure his number. When Hagakure sees this, she stares at him and asks what it's for. Then suddenly Deku replies with, "It's because Aizawa told me I need to take care of you. Plus, it would be a shame if I couldn't get the phone number of someone like you. Or it would be a shame if I didn't leap at the chance to get a phone number from someone like you." Hagakure immediately takes out her phone and inputs the number in little to no time, while going more and more red with each number. She then calls the number on Deku's phone. Rings, she hangs up, and they both save each other's contact. After this, Deku puts a flying Raijin seal on the ground and teleports away. Hagakure is shocked at this and looks around to where he had gone. And when she makes a full turnaround, Deku is standing there with a paper in his hand and gives it to Hagakure. This is the syllabus formed from inside the class. Hagakure looks at him confused. "From in the class? How'd you get there so fast?" Hagakure then gives Deku a slight pout when Deku replies with, "It's my quirk." They both walk out of the school, and Hagakure continuously tries to ask questions about Deku's quirk while blushing doing so. Once Hagakure reaches a turn, she turns to Deku and blushes, and tells him, "Bye, Midoriya, I'll see you later." Deku waves her off and teleports to his room. He continues with his training for the rest of the day, but can't put his whole concentration and focus into it because he thinks about it, and if he made a good impression at the school or if he came off like a jerk. But then he remembers Hagakure thanking him with tears in her eyes, and he sees this image in his mind, and he composes himself and sees that if nothing, he had helped at least one person out and continued training with no interruption. The next day, Deku walks into class and takes his seat in the back of the class like usual. But this time he notices that Hagakure places her books on the desk next to his and asks if it is alright that she sits there. Deku nods lightly and she sits. Deku is wondering why she is sat there and thinks back to Aizawa telling her to stay under his wing and stops thinking about it. As soon as he does, he senses Ome a little after he bursts through the door yelling, "I am here," coming through the door like a normal person. The class begins to be excited and rowdy, seeing All Might in his Silver Age costume nonetheless. Hagakure returns to see Deku's reaction to All Might, but he looks out of it. Hagakure asks him what's wrong, and Deku snaps out of it. Huh? Oh. Hagakure, don't worry about that. I'm alright. Deku tells her this and smiles and looks back at All Might. Hagakure reluctantly does the same. In time to catch up to the part of heroes versus villains task, but before everyone goes outside, All Might says one more thing. Wait, before we go out to ground beta, you'll need these. Immediately, suitcases spread out of the wall with numbers on them. Those are your hero outfits based on the designs you sent into the school. The class go into the locker rooms and change their hero costumes. People are staring at Deku to see what his costume is, and are confused when he just pulls out 2 wristbands, a large scroll, and pants. He puts them on and straps a large scroll around his waist. After that, he closes his eyes. He closes his eyes, and a cloak appears flowing down his back. Everyone in the locker room is astonished at this, seeing him sprout his own clothing. They are starting to see that on his wristbands there are little markings like ink on them, but they brush it off, seeing Deku look at them while only slightly turning his head. After this interaction, they walk outside. Hagakure walks up to Deku and tells him to keep his Sharingan off while he looks at her for now. Deku asks why, and he turns around and apologizes, seeing her in her hero costume. I apologize. I should have seen this as a possibility for your hero costume. He then turns off his Sharingan, but only a few milliseconds after seeing Hagakure red like a tomato. All Might steps out and calls to the class to pick tabs for their partners and pick again for the people who they are going up against. The people were randomly generated into teams, like I randomly generated them, and here they are. Team A, Shoto, Todoroki, and Momo Yaoyorozu. B, Izuku, Midoriya, and Ochako Uraraka. C, Mina Ashido, and Sato, I forgot his last name. D is Frappy and Bakugo. E is Aoyama and Toru and Hagakure. Team F is Mineta and Shoji. Team G is Ida and Kirishima. Team H is Koji and Tokoyami. Team I is Ojiro and Saro. Team J is Kaminari and Jiro. And that's it. Yeah, and the teams are in order from A to J. They are paired by heroes and villains of the opposing pairs. Here are the heroes and villains. First is going to be the hero, and the second is going to be the villain. Team F against Team H, Team E against Team G, Team J against Team D, Team B against Team I, and Team A against Team G, all randomed. The first fight is Team F against Team H. Team F being the hero and H being the villain. The team who wins this is Team F of Mineta and Shoji, and the losers of the match are Koji and Tokoyami. The next match is Team E and C. The team who wins is Team C, which consists of Mina and Sato. And the losing team is E. The losing team is E, which consists of Aoyama and Hagakure. Hagakure is disappointed and saddened by her loss and walks into the spectating area to see Deku. He sees her floating gloves and places his hand on her head, but not being able to see her because he deactivated his Sharingan, but still places his hand on her head and ruffles her hair a bit and says, "You did great for the circumstances. You shouldn't worry about it." The girls in the class have a slight look of jealousy at Hagakure as she places her hands on her cheeks and tries to hold back a blush and slight smile. Deku begins to heal Hagakure as the next fight plays on the screen is Team J and D, and the winners are Farahi and Bakugo of Team D, and the losers are Team J with Kaminari and Judo. The next teams who will need to head into the building are Ojiro and Sero, along with Deku and Ochako. Deku tells Hagakure to wish him luck and smiles at her, still with his Sharingan off, and walks off. She thinks about hugging him before he leaves, but decides against it, considering how she is dressed. Deku and Ochako walk out and set up outside of the building. He tells Ochako his plan and places his hand on her back. Deku makes two clones, and one goes with Uraraka, and the other scouts the inside of the building while he scouts outside. He then sees Uraraka. She is fighting alongside the clone against Sero, but is taken against Sero. He's taken down, and Uraraka goes to tie him up, but Deku sees someone about to hit Uraraka from the shadows and swoops in, using the flying ridge, so he places on her back as a catalyst and blocks Ojiro's tail with his hand and throws him across the room. He goes to fight Ojiro and knocks him out relatively easily. Both Ojiro and Sero become tied up, and Deku and Uraraka touch the bomb in unison. Deku heals the two and unties them as they walk back, thanking Deku for his kindness. When they got back, the last team goes Shoto and Momo of Team A, and Kirishima and Ida in Team G. The round starts and Shoto freezes the entire building and some of the buildings around it because of the display of power Deku showed. He then touches the bomb with his team and then unfreezes the building like he did in canon. The reason he froze more than he did in the original is because he was upset seeing that someone had an immense display of power without even using any elements at that time, and not even using his full power. Even though he doesn't use his fire because hypocrite, but whatever. He wins when All Might ask the whole class who they think did the best. Everyone except for Shoto points at Deku. Upon asking why they think so, Momo responds with, "Because he played the hero part perfectly. He saved his teammate and always kept them safe, along with scouting and taking precautions and doing little to no damage to the building and bomb." All Might is surprised at the amount of information, but nods and tells them that the class is dismissed and to go change and head home for the day. Before running off towards the school, they all change, and Deku walks out first because he just needs to put on his school shirt. And walks outside. Sees Hagakure standing there. He asks what she is doing, and she responds with, "I'm just waiting for you. Is that not okay?" Hagakure then looks at Deku, waiting for an answer. "No, it's not a problem. I was just wondering." Hagakure and Deku walk out of the school, and then they get to the place before Hagakure hugs Deku and walks off. But instead of teleporting home, he teleports to the school and walks to the teacher's lounge and knocks on the door. When he does this, his homeroom teacher opens the door. "Midoriya, what do you need?" "I need to speak about All Might to something important. Can you get him for me?" Aizawa tells him that All Might is out right now and can't come out to talk. Deku then looks at Aizawa confused, but I sense him right behind that wall. Aizawa sighs and allows Deku into the teacher's lounge. Once he's there, he moves over to the room All Might is being held in and opens the door. Hey, All Might, I have an idea of how to boost your time as a hero and a way to fight without your quirk. Aizawa looks amazed that Deku and All Might are talking so normally, though there's a small amount of tension in the air. Really, young Midoriya, you think you can increase my limit? If you have an idea, I'm all for it. Deku then places his hands on his scar and heals it to the best of his ability, though it doesn't heal a lot, considering everybody's been doing so, and the injury happened so long ago that the body is formed to be normal to it. If he had, it doesn't heal a lot even, but it's enough to add 1 to 3 hours on his limit. That's where I'll leave off the what is for this one. Sorry, I took forever to make this one, but due to school starting up again and stuff like that, I have even less, especially because my teachers decide to never give me free time for some reason. But yeah, since all that stuff is happening, I have less time to make do the photos for the thumbnail and then throughout the video, and then I have less time to write the script and stuff. But still, I thank you all for waiting and liking my videos. If you liked my videos so far and hope to see more, subscribing wouldn't hurt. You're able to see the videos that I post, though they may not be the most all the time thing. But oh yeah, there's also going to be a link to my Instagram for the channel. I might post things there for I'm gonna post things there for what's it called? Ideas on what ifs, or just have it so you guys can message me. I might set up a Discord later, but I'm lazy. And there's also gonna be a playlist so you guys can see all the parts in there as well. So yeah, so far, thanks again. Well, see ya.